All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 12th Transit Technical Advisory Committee. Let's go ahead and get it started with introductions. I'm just going to call out each agency, and then if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great. Let's start with Golden Gate Transit.
David Davenport, Principal Planner.
And Petaluma Transit.
Garrett Hall, Petaluma Transit Manager.
And Smart.
Emily Betts, Planning Manager.
Ben Words, Planning Intern.
Welcome. All right, and Marin Transit.
Sneak in attendance. Kathleen Sullivan, Director of Planning.
Thank you. And Sonoma County Transit.
Stephen Schmidt, Sonoma County Transit.
Okay. Let's go to SCTA and then we'll go to the screen.
Drew Nichols, SCTA.
Catherine Stubbs, SCTA.
Dana Stray, SCTA. And then let's move over to SCTA staff on the screen.
Suzanne Smith, SCTA. I'm kind of sad I'm not in the room now. I forgot there's this in-person thing.
Chris Barney, SCTA.
David Ripper, SCTA.
Adam Garcia, SCTA.
And then Smart staff on the screen.
Zoe Unruh with Smart.
Joanne Parker with Smart.
And Sonoma County Transportation Land Use Coalition. Is Steve Burrowbow on the screen? Welcome. All right. Is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? All right, let's move on to item number 3, which is approval of the meeting notes from March 8th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is regional funding, and we have the Transportation Fund for Clean Air fiscal year 23-24 proposed program and projects. And so that action item here is recommending approval of a recommendation for our board on the proposed program and projects. So David, did you want to talk through the projects?
Sure. So we received 5 applications for the available funding. There was a total of about $660,000 available. Of that, by board policy, a certain percentage goes to Santa Rosa City Bus, to Sonoma County Transit, and Petaluma Transit. The county and Petaluma were both able to use their target, but due to the cost effectiveness thresholds, Santa Rosa City Bus could only use $259,744 for their bus replacement project. Because that, the remaining funds from their target was shifted over the competitive program. We've received 2 competitive applications, one from SCTA for the Go Sonoma Commute program, and the other one from Petaluma for a bike lane gap closure project. To fit the available funding, we worked with Petaluma staff to reduce the scope of the bike lane gap closures project to focus on 2 segments of bike lane gap closures. So the original project scope asked for about $135,000 for 1.5 miles of bike lane gap closures. And to fit the available roughly $90,000 in funding, we reduced the scope to 1 mile of gap closures. And then the Go Sonoma Commute program was also reduced slightly to fit within the available funding. So at this time, we'd ask for your recommendation to the board for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on the projects.
No questions for me. I have motion approval.
Second.
All right. Any abstentions? Or. I haven't had enough coffee. All right, any opposition? There you go. Objection. Thank you. The other, oh, word.
I was like, no.
All right, thank you all. This item will also be brought to the Technical Advisory Committee later this month, and then to our board in May. All right, the next item on the agenda is the 2020 Census urban area changes. And so Adam Garcia has made some maps and done some analysis on the changes from the previous urbanized area census maps, and we'll be sharing some information.
All right, good morning, everyone. So to designate the census urban area, there's a lot of different federal funding projects that are associated with where exactly an urbanized or urban area is located. To determine this, the census has traditionally gone off a basis of about 2,500 individuals for an urban cluster, and then about 50,000 people for an urbanized area. So that was the tradition since about 1910. Conditions have changed, and since quite a bit of feedback to the census, they've updated it for 2020. So they want to try to be able to account not just for the strictly just people. They realize that some places are overcrowded, or some places are more vacation oriented, that have less dense areas. So they created a new threshold for 2020 to redesignate urban areas where there must be at least 2,000 housing units or at least 5,000 people. So that's an increase from 2,500 people to 5,000 people for that minimum urban designation. As a result, for Sonoma County, there were a number of former urbanized or urban cluster areas that have now been taken off that urban area designation. One of the things that we were trying to understand a little bit more is how these changes in the urban area designation would affect potential funding. We identified several different funding sources that rely on both the urban area designation, but also based off size as well. One of the interesting things that came about from this analysis also was that they were separating out the distances a little bit more between contiguous urban areas. So in our case, in Sonoma County, Sebastopol was just a little bit further away from Santa Rosa to be considered a single contiguous urban area for the new 2020 methodology. So that is now separated out as its own urban area, which now is quite a bit smaller, obviously without the Santa Rosa urban area designation. So there's been, several changes to this information. I think what we're hoping to just have is just a little bit of a discussion and understanding if our analysis is accurate in terms of how the funding implications might be impacting the transit operations in Sonoma County. So I will open it up for discussion and any questions you might have too.
I know it says relatively minor and it may be hard to calculate right now. Do you know roughly how much money shift you think? Is it a net loss, or does it shift in between the buckets of 5310, 5311? Or is it too hard to tell?
I don't know at this point. I mean, the only route that we removed from the Santa Rosa UA is Route 24, which doesn't have a heck of a lot of miles associated to it. We've still got Route 20 that feeds into the UA. And then even though we've lost Geyserville, we've still got Route 60 that feeds into the UA. So we still dedicate all those miles into the Santa Rosa UA. So really our only route that was removed from the Santa Rosa UA was Route 24. Like I said, it's just a local route, not a heck of a lot of miles. It would have been different if we had taken like Route 20 out of the UA. So we'll make it up with 5311 because it becomes a rural area now at this point.
Yeah.
So we can purchase 5311 or use 5311 operations for Route 24 now. And the other areas, like I might point out, just for clarification, that like Forestville and the Russian River area, Glen Ellen, those were just urban clusters. So they were never attached to the Santa Rosa UA. So as far as I know, that those changes didn't affect the Santa Rosa UA.
That's a helpful clarification. That's one of the changes also that the census is making, is removing that distinction between urban cluster and urbanized area. Everything going forward now is just an urban area. These federal or the funding discussions and requirements might still make those population distinctions, but in general, it's just an urban area now. So there might be some note to change that, no longer, to refer to, I even find myself slipping up on it. So no longer saying urbanized area or urban cluster, it's just urban area.
Well, that simplifies it.
Right.
And Joanne?
In the new version, is Petaluma now part of Santa Rosa? That's what it looks like on your map. Is that the case?
Right.
It was
should
all
be our own urbanized area. We're over 50,000. I
Yeah,
don't.
it's still separate.
Orange is necessarily one urbanized area, right? That's urbanized area. It's, I would assume.
Well, the urban areas above 50,000.
Right, so there's still the differentiation between the large
And the small
area and the
right.
small, which is not shown.
It
on the
doesn't
map.
show up on these maps.
Yeah.
If I may say, I think I was browsing TigerWeb, which is one of the census's data tools, and Petaluma was showing up as its own urban area, but you all might want to verify that yourselves.
Yeah, we are. We continue to be a small urbanized. Our population's around 65,000 or so. So no changes for us, Joanne.
Yeah, that's true.
apportionments will continue to take place in the two separate areas, Petaluma and Santa Rosa.
Correct.
Yeah, we still have two separate UZAs for our service area in Sonoma County, even though we don't apply any service to either one. I don't know, UZA versus UA.
It's just UA. I know you're gonna have to shed UZA.
No,
because
there's a Z.
Yes, correct.
So no, but I guess maybe.
Yeah, so it's only urban area. UA is the new 2020 distinction. So UZA you can shed and apply to something else, but no longer for urbanized area. Yeah.
Sorry, the FTA has the Z in there. That's the reason why I'm confused.
Right.
Yeah, FTA uses the Z, Adam.
I think I just want to butt in. If I remember correctly, the UZAs may have actually been had slightly different boundaries because they're based more on the roads.
Yeah, they're also looking at commuting patterns, particularly. I think it was the longitudinal employment housing data set, so kind of workflow patterns. And then just kind of the separation distance, that's what I mentioned earlier. I think it went from 1.5 to 2.5 miles to be its own distinct urban area. So that's why Sebastopol was separated out.
So if I can ask a question, I came in halfway through, so I apologize if this is already covered, but I remember when the maps first came out at one point, I think we may have talked about this last time, there was a new San Rafael focused UZA that looked like it had been split off from the San Francisco UZA, but then I think that maybe went away. So
I think it was rescinded. I think
Yeah,
they took it
we
back.
got.
Is that right, Jillian?
Okay.
FTA saying, just kidding.
Okay.
They said someone made a mistake.
Yeah, because it was a whole ordeal. I was trying to.
Yeah.
How are we gonna assign our service moving forward? Because we split between, like, how is the East Bay in SF now, but not Marin?
Right. Okay, so that's no longer a thing.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a pretty big looks.
Yeah, it's a pretty big
books. If you're in Marin County.
At least all of your term was one minute.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I don't know how to split it. Like.
All right, great. Thank you for clarifying, y'all.
I just so that everyone knows, and Rachel, you know this, and I'm sure you do too, Stephen, on the FY23 apportionments for 5307, there was a bit of a surprise in the, it was lower for Santa Rosa than it was for the region as a whole. So we have as a standing item, just so you know, Suzanne and David, we being City Bus, SMART, and Sonoma County Transit, we have a pending need to sit down and discuss the formula distribution, because I think that's going to become a bigger issue. We haven't really taken a post-pandemic snapshot of how all our service data is inputting into the apportionments for the area. So that'll be a little bit exacerbated by Sebastopol moving out just a little bit. But we do need to sit down and take a snapshot of that. The other item is SMART's about to start receiving 5337 funds starting in fiscal year 25. And we have not gotten a reading from FTA yet if they're changing the apportionment formula for that with the new 2020 census. They had a way they did it before. I think they're going to continue that way. It has to do with different data points, but it gets apportioned across the large urbanized areas over 200,000. And SMART, when we put our data into NTD, we have about 10% over time, about 10% of our data gets assigned to San Francisco urbanized area. And then that plays into the apportionments that the San Francisco urbanized area gets for 5307 and soon 5337. So I also have it on our list of things to do. And I've asked the transit capital priority folks to check in with us. We need to sit down with MTC and talk about what's happening to our donation to the San Francisco urbanized area, because we don't get apportionments from there. So those are things that we all need to do collectively. And I know we've all been so busy that we haven't had time to do it, but now is a good time to get it calendared.
Yeah, Joanne, if you could involve me in those conversations, that'd be helpful. When I was at ACE, we had long discussions about once their Valley Link program, or excuse me, Valley Rail program was up and running, where they would report their NTD miles, because if they put 5307 in the Sacramento UZA, SAC-RT would get the money. And so the idea that was to report it at Modesto UZA. So not sure what to do here. In this
exact same conversation. And we report as much as we can into the Santa Rosa urbanized area for the 5337 apportionment, because again, they only apportion out, historically only apportion out fixed guideway funds into urbanized areas over 200,000. So they let us assign all of our Sonoma County trip ends into Santa Rosa. But we still donate to San Francisco for the BART car replacement.
All right, any other comments or discussion on this item?
Just on 5337 as an aside, Joanne, I remember when the FTA changed the definition of high intensity bus, everything Golden Gate had in the North Bay disappeared. And we were never able to get a straight answer from MTC on what the actual funding implication was
Mhm.
at the time. I'm sure at some point somebody saw the number, but it was difficult for us to get a read on those sorts of changes. So good luck. At least it's a training, so it's easier, I think, for people to visualize.
All right, any public comment on this item? Zeno.
Yeah, so I'm with the Transportation Working Group of the Climate Action Committee of the City of Sebastopol. So my question is, what are the practical implications of this for the City of Sebastopol?
We don't see any implications. I mean, we don't see any negative implications. We're no longer in the Santa Rosa UA, but we are going to start receiving rural funds for Sebastopol now. So we kind of look at it as a wash. And what we would use for these funds would be for capital projects for bus purchases for the most part. So it's still going to have the same amount of operations funding come through. That doesn't change. So
Thank you.
Change for Route 24.
Also, by not being in an urbanized area, Sebastopol is eligible for the rural set-asides and a lot of federal discretionary grant programs, which are hard to get, but does at least get you some more consideration there.
Yeah, can this be written down, because I'm not too familiar with these details, so it would be good to have a little write-up that we can use in Sebastopol to understand and respond.
Okay, we can put that together for you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else before we move on to the next item? Great. Okay, so item number 6, we wanted to bring up, you all may be aware of this, but MTC has created a transit operations dashboard, and it's in like a beta version right now, and they're seeking input from transit operators and other agencies on this dashboard. It looks like there's a lot of really good information in there that comes from the National Transit Database. And so we just wanted to see if you all have had a chance to look at it, if you have any feedback or comments or discussion on it, we would like to have here.
Is it possible to pull it up?
Yeah. So here we go.
And also, did anyone know what the purpose, like, what was the impetus for putting this together?
Great.
I think it was just the idea that there's this big data inventory that's very difficult to access. And so they just wanted to, Lisa Zorn was from MTC, was the lead on this, just wanted to make this data more accessible for everyone.
Interesting.
And this is a public site.
It is accessible publicly. It's yeah, I think it's a work in progress, but and I'm not sure if it's posted on MTC's website and searchable anywhere, but
okay, it's in the packet, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not yet. They're kind of in a beta testing, but if anybody wants me to click on one of these, if you can read them.
Maybe monthly unlinked passenger trips. You know, we pull this data every month, and it is a pretty giant unwieldy table.
Yeah.
Makes it easier.
Top
right.
Thanks. Oh, monthly table for unlinked. Got it. Oh, that's just the table. That's not as interesting.
Well, it narrows it down to the Bay Area. Maybe that.
Yeah.
Part, right? You're not every transit agency in the country. Yeah.
It's looks nice. I mean, it goes back 20 years, has everybody on it. I would say looking at it, I just brought it up on my computer over here. If there is some way to do like totals over a period, because it's just like the monthly numbers, but if I wanted to know like a year or something to really get a better gauge on who's the top 7 in the Bay Area, which apparently Marin Transit, us and County Connection now seem to bounce around month to month, whereas it used to always be number 7. So at some point, I wonder if MPC's top 7 should become a top 6 just because of that. But, oh, that's a depressing chart.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a clip.
the revenue hours one is pretty good too. I like looked at the revenue hours as well. It's interesting. It's nice you can toggle. I just messed around a little bit yesterday. You can toggle, agencies off and on, to get rid of the really big operators if you want to have a better sense of the smaller ones and how you compare. I did notice for City Bus.
Download it.
Well, yeah, there's a little download thing. I didn't actually try to do it. I didn't see
image. That's kind of cool that you can download the image.
Yeah, I didn't see an Excel option per se, but I didn't really try.
Yeah, doesn't say for data, looks like it's available yet.
Yeah.
Maybe with the tables, you can probably.
With the table, probably right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I tried that. One thing I noticed for us is there was a period of years in the early 2000s where there was no data reported for a couple things, and I don't know why that data wouldn't be available. So, it might just be worth checking to make sure that all your data is in there.
Yeah, it looks like you could only download PDFs or image files right now. Maybe that's a comment back that it'd be nice to download.
And maybe they're waiting until we all say thumbs up before, the data's all downloadable and floating around.
And it was MTC that's doing this work?
Yeah, okay. I have not received anything about this from MPC, so that's.
This is the first I heard. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, this was just shared at the Regional Modeling Working Group just last week. So it's very, very fresh. And this is kind of their first step, was just wanting to get feedback from all of you specifically. What improvements, how much you might want to see it improved, or what other data. So yeah, all your feedback will be passed on to them.
It's a great visualizer for people who maybe don't understand just how bad of a drop we had due to COVID.
Yeah.
Who doesn't understand?
Our passengers, when they say all of our commute runs,
right,
and I'm like, well, if you were going to the office, we would do it, but
yeah.
And Adam, do you know if there's a certain time frame that MTC is asking for comments on this? And
there was no, there wasn't one given, but I would say, yeah, within the month would probably be great. I know we'll revisit this at the next regional planning group meeting. So I'm sorry, the regional modeling group meeting. So that sometime around then in the next month or two would be good.
So one I didn't have a chance to look at, but I think, not to make it overly complicated, but I'm assuming that unlinked passenger trips is all modes, and I don't know if that's true or not, but we're all reporting demand response, fixed bus. It might be nice to have a little bit more differentiation if it's lumping all the modes into one, for Golden Gate, like, is that ferry and bus? Like, I don't know,
which the answer is yes, but we don't usually think about paratransit. So which for us is a small number, but for some agencies might be bigger. So it might be nice to just be able to turn off paratransit for everybody to get a more of a feel of what fixed route service is like.
Yeah. Because you're right, for some operators it's sort of marginal, but other, and I don't know what percentage of the bridge districts ridership right now is bus versus ferry, but that seems like an important distinction,
Right,
so
yeah. Yeah, especially since COVID, like our recovery has been much stronger on ferry than bus.
Right.
So now it's almost 50-50, but if you look historically, you'll see that bus used to be a much bigger
Right,
percentage.
right. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've all seen that transit recovery website, probably. It's the whole, it's called transitrecovery.com, something like that. Remember that site I was showing you? You should check that one out too. I mean, it's just made by, I think, a couple transit enthusiasts. Let's see. Yes. And it compares, so if you can scroll down. And it has percentage service restored and then ridership recovery for every transit agency. And I think it's comparing current month against an average of January and February of 2020. So the 2 months pre-COVID. It's really interesting. Yeah, and it's a nice graphic way to see it. So.
It's called transitrecovery.org.
.com.
I will say that one thing that this is making me think of, the MTC link, is that when I've been trying to access national level transit data, it's often just not as standardized as I would prefer in terms of like, when you are looking at data for a specific station, it won't always tell you, oh, this station is this mode or that mode. So it wouldn't surprise me that if they're pulling from national level transit data, it doesn't have that level of consistency to be able to do that.
Yeah, in the giant spreadsheet, you can filter by mode. And we always pull out paratransit when we're looking at recovery, right? Because paratransit recovery means something different than start recovery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have to see if we can, I'll have to play around with this and see if it can do that.
I'll have to look at that, that's all.
8% service.
That's not right.
So Jared, looks like you're running no buses, huh?
Yeah, I think that's a 0 actually. So maybe there's something going on there.
I have that 92%. Now we're running the same service generally, so
Instead of very small, you're now very, very
yeah, something went wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you restored the right routes. So that 50 rider back into savings.
Yeah, we did on the productivity route.
Yeah, they're really productive.
Oh yeah, so that is separated out by ferry and bus, as you said. There it is.
That's interesting.
And this is just coincidentally that chart that graph right there is a reminder of an issue we all have, which is finding bus operators. But there's no issue with finding staffing in Maritime, which is why we're able to have 100% of our ferry service back.
Interesting. What do you think the difference is? What's going on with Maritime stuff?
Is it
just wages?
They have like a union house, and you just kind of show up and say, I need 10 deckhands for 3 months or something like that, and they just go do it. So it's a very different business relationship than you have your own bus drivers and your own union, and they just drive your own buses.
Interesting.
But they're like still Golden Gate Ferry employees, but it's just it's a different world. Maritime is very different in many respects. Had no idea until I started working there.
Can I add something? We had oh god, what year was it? I don't even know now. We took a number of these types of metrics to our board in the spring to discuss performance metrics that they wanted to see going forward, or that they were exploring seeing going forward. And I noticed that the data information that's being shown on the MTC website is really the raw data, but like filtered down for just the Bay Area. And I don't know if there are some other simple calculations that could be processed into a performance evaluation type thing, or anything with any kind of depth. I mean, it's one thing to have 1,000 passenger trips but if they're all 1 foot long versus 10 miles long, I mean, it's a different output. So I don't know, if has the group talked about doing more analysis with this data, or is it just
I think that's
filtering it down?
precisely what they're looking for. It's like, what are some real world uses where you need to use this data? Can we do some simple coding to be able to modify it? So then it's actually useful, you know, print out a PDF and hand it to your board kind of thing would maybe be too ideal, but it's pretty close to that. You know, so think about, yeah, exactly like you were saying, what data is there? And if you can modify, especially with existing data rather than pulling in new data, if there's existing data that just needs some quantifiers, per capitas or whatever, please send that to us, send that to me, or and I'd be happy to pass it along. But that's exactly, I think, what they're looking for. Okay.
And I may have missed it. I know you talked about timeline for when they want it, but is there a production timeline for them? When are they thinking they want to have something publicly available?
I can check in with them. I don't know exactly when that is. It's a good question though.
So Jan, are you suggesting maybe passenger miles traveled as a metric?
Yeah, I mean, that's just an easy example. I know we have that, the longer haul services versus the shorter haul services and the value of that trip, right, you know, kind of stuff. I know that's one that pops up all the time, but there may be others. I was just curious if there's going to be this extra step, because you're producing a lot of data for public conclusion. So, but if you're not processing it to provide any kind of nuanced or professional expertise on it, then I'm just wondering how it gets used at the end once it gets deployed to the public.
Remember the conversation about TDA? Like, can we move beyond fare box recovery ratio? Was that 3 years ago? I don't know. Whatever happened with that? TDA was.
It's still a CTA. Well, there was statutory relief, which I think we've got till the end of this year, but I know it's others may know more, but it's a goal of CTA and its statewide advocacy to get that statutory relief extended, to give us all time and the legislature time to recoalesce around that TDA reform effort to like hopefully evolve towards a longer term fix. So that's what I've heard from the CTA
that's
committees.
Still underway.
Yeah, it's still definitely like right up there on the radar.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we have MTC has given us relief for until 2024, I want to say, for RM2, which I don't know if any other operators in the North Bay get any RM2, but I'm assuming they use a similar measure for RM3, which there might be some money for the North Bay and Met. And so it would be hopefully they'll come up with something a little bit better than fare box recovery, because it's especially now with the drive towards equity communities, you know, like in our system with the regional operator, our service into those neighborhoods is kind of maybe the least financially sustainable, because they tend to pay a lower average fare than, you know, say a white collar commuter. And so it's maybe not fair to use that metric for funding a service like the Richmond Bridge bus service, for example. But we'll see. I think MTC seems to have their hands on it, because they know.
Would it be helpful to bring this conversation back to this group next month, after people have had some time to dive into the website and the data a little more? Sure. Great. Dino, go ahead.
Yeah, so in Sebastopol, we have a project group looking into metrics to support climate action. And one of the issues that has come up, I think one of you mentioned this already just a minute ago, is data equity. And it's a very complicated topic, but we're focusing on the question, are the metrics we're proposing informative to support conversation about equity? So that means, for example, is the data enough de-aggregated So you don't put everything in the same basket. You try to make distinctions. So for example, you can look at census tracts and look at average price of houses and number of percentage of solar in that census tract. And you can kind of discuss how your subsidies, your efforts to increase solar are effective over all income levels or house prices. So that's something I would like to see in something like the MTC data, that there's more de-aggregation happening so that it becomes informative about these questions around equity.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? All right, moving along, item number 7 is transit integration update. A brief update on the local bus transit integration work. We are planning for, with the integrated transit service planning study, we are working with the consultants on getting ready to do some surveys, which will take place the first week of May. So these will be at transit centers. Sorry, the consulting group is coming in the first week of May, but the survey will actually be out there before that. And be distributed both to transit and non-transit riders. And the consulting group will be here the first week of May doing surveys at various events and some on bus and transit centers. We are still working on getting our contract fully signed for the website design work, but it's moving just very slowly. Catherine's been doing some work on Clipper Start, which you could talk about a bit.
So Clipper Start is an initiative that NTC is doing. It is in a pilot phase that will be up for renewal next month, and that'll be set for an additional 2 years to the 1-year pilot that it's currently on. And Clipper Start is to give folks who are at or below 200% of the federal poverty line discounts between 20 and 50% of general fares for a selected number of transit lines. And it's for individuals between the ages of 19 and 64, because equal or greater benefits are available for folks who are under the age of 19 or over the age of 64. And so I'm working with a couple community-based organizations within Sonoma County to raise awareness about it and to get information out to folks so they can sign up and have applications about it.
Thanks. Let's see, I know that there's the mapping and wayfinding, on the mapping and wayfinding effort, there's been a number of working group meetings, and then there's a larger meeting happening at the end of this week. So I will just open it up for discussion on any of those items.
Kathy, you said you're working with local organizations to do outreach on Clipper Start. Start. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's good. We need that.
Yeah,
in Sonoma County. It's such a low uptake rate. And when we met with the MTC, we really expressed that need to have resources to do that outreach. And we're all so small, we just don't have the staffing. So
yeah, and they haven't been in Sonoma County either, so they were excited to come up here to do some outreach.
Great, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love. Maybe at some point you could send out like a description of what groups have been reached out to and what the outcome is.
Yeah, so far we're starting with a small number. So Latino service providers and Redwood Empire Food Bank.
Okay, great. Yeah, because when I fielded sort of individual requests from like our local homeless shelter and stuff about transit questions, and I always say, there's this program, and they never know. They're never aware of it. So there's a lot of outreach that's needed.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Has everyone heard the updates about Clipper Start? Yeah.
Updates is one.
That they're putting towards the commission to extend the pilot and increase to 50% discount for all transit providers in the Bay Area. And that they're going to reimburse all transit providers for that 50%. So increase the reimbursement. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's an upfront estimate for 2 years.
Yeah,
right.
But they're estimating very conservative.
I know
so they anticipate giving people plenty of money. And retroactively reimbursing everyone for the folks who opted for 50% from the start.
Wow.
Retroactively reimburse them for the difference between what they got reimbursed, which was 25, and what they actually.
Right.
But also there's been really low uptake regionally.
Yeah.
They've only spent, what has it been, 2 or 3 years? They've only spent regionally.
Wow.
Like every operator, BART, AC, all of including all the big ones. So basically no one's using, I mean, very few people are using this program.
The income threshold is very low for the Bay Area. Like, yeah, for one individual, you have to make at or less than 29,000 and some change. So it's very low.
You said 200% to poverty, as in federal poverty?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the Bay Area, that is unusually low. Though.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't qualify because of that income, because it is super low.
Okay. I mean, we really, when we met with them, really pushed the need to transition to a system where at the same time that you're signing up for food stamps, right? And Medicare, you're also getting offered this, right? Which is what they do in other states.
Yeah, and that can be,
they're working on that.
Exactly. I spoke with the person at NTC and they said that having an EBT card, CalMed, or anything like that can be used as proof of income because folks will need to have proof of ID and proof of income to do the application. That's cool.
Yeah.
I know in terms of the original budgeting for the pilot, all of those estimates were done right before COVID started. So we actually went back and looked for an estimate for our agency, and we assumed that because of the steep drop in ridership, that we would get nowhere near what we thought that threshold would be for where we would start paying out of our own pocket. So it sounds like that ended up being the case for pretty much everyone. So it's nice that that means more money for the program moving forward, and that everybody else will join us at the 50% rate.
Yeah, so they're requiring all the agencies to do 50%, is that right?
I mean, it's still an optional program, I guess.
Okay, they're just encouraging.
Well, this is a good clarification. I don't know if 20% will be an option anymore. You can opt out completely. So participating in START is still optional. It's not mandatory. But I think they are moving to the only option to participate is 50%.
I think that's better.
But they're going to reimburse the full 50% also.
Yeah, because I think before they would only reimburse you 10% regardless, right? Whether you did a 20 or 50% discount. So now they're increasing the money that potentially you can provide you as an agency.
I see. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I had to do a financial analysis to make sure we weren't going to be bleeding money, basically. And because of the drop in ridership, we weren't going to be, at least from that program.
But that is a good clarification. I'm pretty sure that was my understanding.
I think that's a good move. I think it's confusing for the rider too. Why would they give different agencies?
Exactly. Kind of aligns it with half fare too, which is just nice.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But they need to add it to the pass. It's obvious. I mean, it only applies to individual affairs.
Right. Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
A question, if I may ask, on the next step. So I've received, I think, maybe 2 phone calls, and maybe even one person has showed up at our office for Clipper Start. I'm sending them to the transit mall. Is that a good spot to get the card and all that information, or should I?
The card has to be mailed to you.
Or something like, because I can go to the kiosk at the transit mall, they have the information, but
they don't even need to do that, but we can help them there. For
Okay.
sure, we'll totally help them out.
Okay.
Get them what they need.
I just want to make sure I'm sending them to the right,
What would be good, I mean,
You can do it online.
Yeah.
So they don't need to go to
And there's some brochure, like they still have those brochures that have the application, right? So we should give you guys some of those too, just to have in case people wander in. You could just hand them, they can send it in directly.
Yeah, because I think last time someone came in here, they're like, but you're Sonoma County Transit.
Yeah, right. I know this happens all the time.
So, just want to make sure I'm sending people in the right direction, because we did get asked for a Clipper Start once. I was like, Rachel's got you.
We got them, but we don't, if we're closed, they can still follow up. So we should get you guys some brochures just so you have them. Yeah, cool, we can do that.
Thank you.
About the wayfinding, is anyone going on Friday?
Oh, Thursday.
I'll be there on
Thursday.
Fridays.
You're going on Friday. I think Ben is gonna go from Smart.
I think Matt's going for City
Matt's
Bus.
going.
Yeah,
Quite
he's planning to go.
day.
He's gonna be a little bit late because of, kids.
Okay, and you haven't heard back from them regarding?
No.
The tests.
The prototype site?
Yeah, prototype
Yeah, so
sites.
we responded in the background. We're like, wait, Santa Rosa Transit Mall meets all these 6 criteria. Like, why are we eliminating Santa Rosa Transit Mall? It's a great idea. It's got all sorts of interesting challenges. And Emily and I have been going back with Jumana about trying to set up a time to meet with them. But we'll see what happens.
And I know, so I'll be there on Friday for the Thursday session. I don't know if any of you know Melanie Sanborn, but she'll be there on the Thursday.
Okay,
session. So we'll be covered in both. Obviously different perspectives.
Oh, sorry. One more thing I wanted to ask about Clippers Start is that I know somebody mentioned that it's tied to federal poverty levels rather than like locally regional price parity adjusted definitions. Do you know if there's any plans to tie it to this more regional price parity adjusted type of poverty in the future?
Not that I've heard of in my conversations with MTC.
I mean, I get the sense they're somewhat rethinking it because they probably had less uptake, ridership's down, so they probably had more money in the pot than they thought they would. So that's probably part of the thinking for why they're expanding it and increasing the allocation they'll provide. I don't know the answer to your question, maybe behind the scenes, if you talk to some of the managers at MTC to see if that was part of the consideration or not, right?
Because I think that or reducing the barriers to apply,
Mm-hmm.
which I have definitely heard.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though it seems like simple, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Would be the things that would actually increase uptake of the program. I mean, yes, the percent reduction, I mean, the discount, but really those are the 2 things.
Yeah, just submit all your documents. Yeah,
it's a lot easy.
Yeah, but it is a really low threshold for this area.
Yeah. I really like the idea of sorry to interrupt, but aligning it with another, already means tested benefit like you were discussing. So it just becomes automatically associated with, other benefits for low income folks and just pick them. Here's, do you want this card? Here it is, kind of thing. Yeah.
I know our customer service team at Golden Gate has tried to say, because we'll have social service agencies come to us for tickets and stuff. And so we'll say, hey, don't forget, we also have these other programs, but it is, from their perspective, maybe difficult to manage getting people into that program, or it might just be, well, it's a one-off situation, so it's not a problem or something, but trying to get that word out there, is, I guess, the best we can do at the moment.
Yeah.
With more money, it would be great to adjust up the threshold.
All right, any other discussion on transit integration?
So besides mapping and wayfinding, there's also what's now called Transit 2050 Plus. And so there is going to be an all-day charrette at the beginning of May for the team that's kind of the project management team for that, which I think you're the small transit representative, right? So it'll be the big 7 or whatever. And then one rep. Now, I don't know if there is a final resolution on whether that small transit membership would be expanded or not. But
I don't think there's been any time.
Okay, but we'll, I guess we're getting a consultant on board and a new project manager that'll be hired, that has been hired from AC Transit to help manage the projects.
What is
This
it?
is basically the network.
Oh,
It's the network.
it's
piece
the,
of
okay.
regional.
Okay.
Yeah.
The original name is
The connected network plan.
Yeah.
So the
Okay,
reason
all
they're
right,
calling
all right.
The reason they're calling it 2050 plus is because they're trying to get it into the RTP.
Yeah,
So that you
gotcha.
aren't doing like a network planning exercise in the RTP.
Yeah.
But it does make for a really accelerated schedule.
Yeah.
And like it puts all the constraints of the RTP on this effort. So it's instead of being this separate thing where, there's sort of full flexibility to see how you approach it and what we're already months behind and we haven't even really started.
I feel like we're 5 months behind and we haven't started.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's on the Plan Bay Area 2050 plus schedule now, which makes it that much more challenging.
Yeah, but I think one of the big questions that is to be resolved and will be part of the discussion on this day-long workshop is what is the regional network?
Right.
So what, there's regional operators, which has been by ridership, and now, the 7th slot is sort of in flux.
Yeah.
And then, but there's also local routes that really count. I mean, they serve a regional purpose. I think San Francisco's argued that their entire system should be regional because, just of the nature of San Francisco, and there's a lot of other arguments you can make about what should qualify as regional. So really, what is that sort of that threshold, or is it even a useful threshold? And but all the regional kind of integration stuff is really tried to focus on, instead of having every single route and every single rider throughout this huge region with all these operators, sort of honing in on the regional stuff. But I think it's a lot harder when you get to the network level.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Okay.
Anyway, I know that's a big part of what the conversation is going to be about.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, like, at least in our end, we don't want to be in a situation where every muni route ends up being a regional route, because there goes all the money. So trying to come up with a definition that really tries to balance that. Well, are there regional trip generators, or other things along the route? How many of them are there? Are people actually traveling regionally on public transit to those places, etc.?
Yeah.
To be
also the link to, like, does it mean that's where all the money goes?
Well, yeah, that hasn't been resolved either.
But I think that's what everyone assumes, and so then it becomes sort of a competition of like who's in and who's out. And also, there's a lot of advocates around making sure the entire region is connected so that you can perfectly travel from Santa Rosa to San Jose. No transfers, I mean, that kind of concept is sort of out there. So really trying to hone in on what are the transfers that would actually benefit the largest number of riders, or that have the greatest potential for increasing ridership. Sort of honing in on those kind of questions from a connectivity standpoint. Before we have any consultants on board to do a bunch of data analysis. Not that the data is kind of insufficient anyway. Ideally, you'd know from Clipper, like, what are all the highest transfer nodes or whatever, but the first kind of deficient in the data that actually we can provide. But anyway, perhaps TMI, but we're going to be spending an entire day together at FTC. Weeks.
Yes, and I don't even know if that whole day will be enough to crack this down. But because we don't want to also be in a situation where, if ridership is too heavily weighted, then say Solano County, which has a lot of actual regional trip types, is going to be left out, and then somebody like BTA might end up with a bunch of stuff in the system, but is a trip entirely within Santa Clara County even regional at all? Period. So.
Do you have any input? As a small operator rep, I'm really happy to receive anyone's input before May 3rd or whatever that. Seriously, it's a really hard question to answer. So I would actually be happy to receive anyone's feedback.
And I'd love to be happy on that as the number 7 slot. Because depending on how
Is it a public workshop?
I think it's just the PMT.
I think it's just the
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for doing that.
We are not attending all of these workshops this week, though, so we'll report back. I don't think there's anyone from Marin County who's able to go this week.
It's a 5-year process.
Yeah.
We don't have a chance.
We went in big on the connected network, but that means we don't really have the bandwidth to do all the other things. So
hard to do it all. All right. Any other kind of integration discussion? Okay, let's do some updates. Okay. Oh, sorry. Any public comment on this item?
Did you forget to do?
I was just all right, let's do transit operator update. Stephen, you want to start off?
Sure, we're taking our SRTP to our board next Tuesday, finally. might be the last in the Bay Area to finally go to our board, but we're taking it. And then in May, I think it was May 23rd, we're going to take our fleet transition plan, the CARB plan, to our board. Just yesterday, we received 3 more 30-foot UID electric buses.
Cool.
So that doubled our electric fleet.
Nice.
And today, hopefully, we're going to be submitting a Lono bus facilities grant for another 21 electric buses. We're going to partner with Proterra. Nice. We're going all in.
All in. I don't want to take everyone's time, but I'm curious how you guys answered the workforce development piece of that. So we should chat. That's a new challenge.
It's a new requirement.
Yeah. We did, but might have some other ideas that we could all develop for the next round, you know. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, thanks. And Golden Gate Transit.
At our March board meeting, the board approved our 5-year fare program with, I guess I should give you more background. So starting July 1st will be the first of the 5 years. And we went with, we had proposed 4 options to the public, unfortunately, but the public seemed to tolerate the 30 pages of tables that came with. And we settled on what was called option 2, which is basically a 25-cent per year fare increase for cash paying adults. And then everything is adjusted, of course, based on that, you know, for Clipper discounts, Clipper Start discounts, senior youth disabled discounts, etc. One change that was made based on public comment is the special event ferry fares were removed from the program and will be handled separately. I mean, sorry, that was not actually due to public comment, but due to, I guess, we need to do a separate Title VI analysis for that. There were some hang-ups on that because Chase Center service started as a demonstration project right before COVID started. So there's not like any actual Title VI data or something. And then the Giants Ferry Title VI data was outdated or whatever. So we removed the special event ferry service from the fare package. And so I'll probably go to our board later this year. So anyway, 25 cents per year per fare. So if it's, you know, $12 now, it'll be $12.25 starting July 1st, et cetera, for bus and ferry. And there are some changes to the ferry Clipper Start discounts, actually, speaking of which, because we were doing 50% off of the cash fare, but very few people actually pay the cash fare on ferry because it's a lot more expensive than the Clipper fare. So in the interest of actually making it a meaningful discount, we've adjusted that to 50% off of the Clipper fare for ferry. So those new Clipper Start fares for ferry will be more in line with what the equivalent bus fares are for those same trips. So if you're going from Larkspur to San Francisco, the price differential will be pretty similar between both modes, whereas currently the ferry Clipper Start fare is almost double the bus fare, which is not really the intent of the programs. And then beyond that, we had a service change in March, which we already talked about, was very minor on our end. We still have some pre-canceled service in our system, but we have reduced that amount as of this week. So there's just a few trips scattered around that were published in our transit guide that are not running, but none of those trips are on service here in Sonoma County, which is good. So it's pretty minor at this point, hopefully to be resolved in the near future. And in terms of ridership, ridership's been steady. We haven't really seen an increase, but considering all the problems with financial district in the city, the fact that it hasn't really dropped off a lot is also good. I'm sure you've seen news weekly for the past few months about layoffs in the city. So luckily there hasn't been too big of an impact to our ridership. I think that's the main stuff from us.
Where's the I think last month and before you mentioned the rider survey that you were doing. Where are you in the process of that?
So we just did project kickoff So we're settling on what the final questionnaire is. And we'll be working with our consultant to actually schedule those surveys. And it sounds like later spring into the summer is when that surveying will occur. I'm not privy to the exact schedule yet, but I have a feeling by next month I should have that information to share.
Great. Thanks.
When is that Clipper Start discount on ferry becoming effective?
The new lower rate will start July 1st. So we have Clipper Start currently, but for ferry it's just not very meaningful based because of what the base rate is based on.
All right, Maureen.
Hey, Dana. Hey, sorry. Could you give an update on what's happening with the Golden Gate strategic planning effort?
There is a strategic planning effort underway. I haven't heard anything for a while on it. I think it's kind of still in progress with upper management. I know at the more at the staff level, there were some questions that were passed around last summer. So it's taken a while.
Okay, so there's not necessarily a schedule for presentations or anything like that?
Doesn't sound like it, no. That's the latest I've heard is it's kind of ended up being a slower process than I think they originally envisioned. I would suspect that some of that has to do with our budget deficit.
Got it. Thank you.
Question on the fairs is it does not apply to Marin County fairs, right? The 25 cents.
Oh, right.
And isn't there?
Yeah, there's some carve out.
Sonoma County.
Oh yeah, I guess since the Sonoma County audience, I should have led with that, which is the big change. Is our local fairs will be handled more different than they used to be, and so our regional fairs will be that 25 cent per year fare increase, but we're actually lowering the Sonoma County local fare to be more in line with local operators. So right now, all of our local fares in each county except for Marin are $5, and so those local fares in San Francisco will just continue with that 25 cent per year increase, but in Sonoma County we'll be lowering it to $3, and that $3 will be held steady for the 5 years, unless the local operators change their fares. And I'm looking mostly to you, Steve, because the fare is most similar to what Sonoma County Transit charges. Right, because they're $2.10 and will be $3, but then it's really $2.40 with the Clipper discount, and then we also have all of the 50% off programs and stuff. So we don't want to undercut the local operators, but we want to be more in line because especially in the later evening, early morning, we're the only game in town. And so those people aren't riding locally in Sonoma County Transit just because they love our buses so much. It's really, they have no other choice. And in Marin County, we will hold at the steady at the $2. Unless Marin Transit changes their fares. And then same in the East Bay, we had to lower some of our fares as part of the BART Early Bird Express program. Since we do run some local bus service for BART in the early morning. And so we'll be having the East Bay local fare down to $2 as well. And that'll be now cash and Clipper instead of kind of mix and match. So really trying to ease the financial burden kind of on some more of these equity communities that aren't necessarily a large percentage of our riders. So therefore there's not a huge financial implication.
What's considered a local route in Sonoma County? Is it just
it's
a zone? So like
just Petaluma to San Jose.
Okay.
Yeah. Not crossing the county line.
Great. Thanks.
So let's see, we have service changes going into effect on beginning of June, which it's the biggest service change we've made since 2016. So it was just approved by our board, and like substantively, most trips should be able to be made, but there are going to be a lot of tweaks to schedules and which route people take and whether they have to transfer or not transfer. So it affects about half of our routes. And then we also are submitting on some grants. I think they're due tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the workforce development thing has definitely been a hot topic in the office. Given that, I do think it's an issue that would be better addressed regionally. I actually brought it up at the meeting on this sort of joint Bay Area operator meeting on Monday. There's a lot of barriers to, there's the potential for competition for one, and this sort of like rates competition, and then there's union issues and there's all sorts of things. But on the other hand, I mean, there's also, it's hard to recruit sort of agency by agency. So it might be something after these are all submitted, since it's tomorrow, we could all kind of compare notes on what we did.
Yeah.
And see if there's any overlap or synergies that, should anyone actually get any money.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Especially up here in the North Bay, it just seems like we'd be better off helping one another than competing.
Agreed. Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't think there's any other big youth pass, but there's other forums in which we talk about that. But we're all offering youth fairs now that David's walked out. Youth free youth summer. So working on permission.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, smart. Ridership has been good. It's been really strong the last couple of weeks. Maybe because it stopped raining.
I was on my fullest train ever yesterday.
Yeah, we've had a number of pre.
Are you serious? Level that I really wasn't used to. I literally don't think there was a single, the whole train where there wasn't already a person in a seat, which is notable. Great.
Yeah. We talk about that, people's comfort level, right? There's the literal number of seats and standing spots, and then there's what people are willing to accept on a community.
Well, I've just gotten accustomed to accept. The guy who was my lucky seat partner got to hear all about it. I was like, man, the first time I've ever had, I might have had too much coffee, but
it's like, isn't it great?
Isn't it great? TMI, sorry, I don't mean to take over your.
It's okay. Actually, next to the entry to our offices, we have a TV screen with the live numbers of people on the train, and I stand there and obsess over it. Every time I walk past, 87 people. So we've had a lot of groups on the train lately. We've had people going to the Giants opening day on Friday. It was a big day, and we've had a ton of field trips. We started this field trip program, and almost every day we have a field trip on the train. During non-commute hours, which is amazing. I'm actually chaperoning one tomorrow for my son's school, which I'm excited about. Okay, so ridership's good. We are starting a weekend night service on Friday and Saturday nights, so that you all can take the train to dinner and other evening events. I think it's going to be called the Starlighter.
Oh, so romantic.
It's going to be really romantic. It is. And it's going to start the first weekend in May. Okay, so you'll hear more about that. And we're doing the 3 youth summer program. We mentioned that. And we are starting our first microtransit service at Sonoma County Airport in the beginning of June. Taking that to the board next week. Very exciting. What other questions? Related to the free youth summer program, I met with the Sonoma County Regional Parks manager yesterday. And, Julia has been asking everyone for destinations. This would primarily be a Sonoma County Transit thing. We're trying to figure out which parks could be best served by transit. Because the combination of getting free entry to the parks, because you're not parking, and then free transit, right, is a really great offer, for the summer. So that will probably come up again in our free youth summer program, but just keep that in mind. And then I also was wondering what the status of the bike share is.
Yeah. So that we are getting a change in our contract for the grant for basically removing there's a proposed change to remove the
Clipper integration requirement that MTCA put on the grant. That's going to commission next week. And we are have just been a little bit slow finalizing our RFP, but basically also just waiting for the okay on that to remove that piece of it, that requirement, because it's an expensive thing for micromobility operators to do, and it's with Clipper moving toward 2.0 and the app-based system, it just doesn't seem so necessary anymore. So we're working on it and going to get it out in the coming weeks. Okay. All right, Petaluma Transit.
Yeah, I love you. So we continue work on our facility electrification. We're working with NV5 Consulting Group. The next closest decision point for us is which charger we're going to be going with. So narrowing down that list. And obviously it relates to the bus manufacturer that we want to look at as well. So getting close to making those decisions. Our DBE plan, our first one ever, was accepted by City Council. So we now have that going. Disadvantaged Business Enterprise plan for all of our federally funded projects. We'll be running fare free on Butter and Eggs Day, Saturday, April 22nd, which is also Earth Day. And I know several of the operators are also running fare free on Earth Day. We're also running free on the Antique Fair, which is the following Sunday, April 30th. Usually it's the same weekend, but this time here it's a week later. We submitted an AHSC grants for Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program grants, working in conjunction with SMARTS. And basically that's a grant that, if successful, will provide a lot of funding for the second Petaluma Smart Station. So additional funding for building the platform, for doing other improvements within, like a half-mile area for bus stop improvements, bike ped improvements, things along those lines. And I believe we anticipate hearing back in June on that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. We're also planning on doing a low-no grant application, so finalizing that as well. And then in the city, the North McDowell construction project is coming along. I believe the plan is to wrap that up by the end of the year. But people have gone through that quarter, they've seen a lot of work. Already you can see a lot of the improvements they're doing with sidewalks, curb ramps. So hopefully people will see a lot of benefit from that project as well. And that's it.
Okay. Let me know if you want to let our support for your grant application.
Okay, appreciate it.
Nice. Okay. For City Bus, I don't have much today. Ridership, I just got a report for February, so we're up 33% year over year, so continuing in a good direction. Youth ridership was 33,000. I mean, it was like over 30% of our ridership that month. And I think our regular ridership a little bit down because it always is in February and then weather, but the youth is just like powerhouse. It's amazing. So that number was, I mean, we got above 20,000 and we were really excited, and 33,000. Yeah. And then the only other thing is last night council awarded our new CAD AVL system to Synchromatics. So we'll be switching in the next 6 months from Avail over to Synchromatics. And that was part of Napa Valley Transportation Authority's joint procurement process. So
yeah, Petaluma is hoping to bring that in the next month or so. Our council will also go with Synchromatics.
Cool. So that'll be a big shift for us. Wish us luck. That's all I've got.
All right, thanks.
Actually, that prompted me to think of one other thing, which is our board just did just approve us using Swiftly for GTFS, because our Synchromatics data, especially in more remote parts of the county, is not very accurate.
Okay.
And there's sort of gaps in like all of our West Marin service. There's sort of these big gaps, so the real-time information is not particularly accurate. So we're still using the hardware, hardware, but Swiftly is going to start providing our GTFS feed.
Okay.
Soon, I think they're working on. They just approved it the board just approved it, and so we're sort of working with Swiftly to. I don't know what the go live date is, but theoretically, our real time arrival information should be a lot more accurate.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear how it goes for you, your experience with them.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that it's not like a cellular signal problem that's the issue, it's something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's gonna be modem, I mean, there's gonna be modems on all the buses.
Okay.
Not my.
No.
But yes, no longer gonna be,
That's like me talking about technology, you know, those things.
you know, the things.
Do you know if you're doing the rider alerts module as well?
I don't remember all the modules we opted into. I know there was a lot of back and forth because some were pretty pricey. And so we struck some middle ground on the data we thought was most important to us. And I think, I don't remember. I have to go back and look.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have them for our GTFS road card, but I think we're expanding to rider alerts and service adjustments, which you are no doubt purchasing as well. So they have all these little modules they want to sell you.
Yeah.
You never have them all. There's always more.
I know that, which is the challenge.
Yeah.
It does sound like they're sort of in the industry moving towards eventually being able to be the synchromatic system, basically. But I think that through an entirely different technological solution, which again quickly gets out of my ability to explain, but we got a whole presentation from their higher ups, and so it might eventually be a stepping stone towards completely replacing synchromatic, going with their system, which I do think is going to be a different technological solution to. So.
I'm intrigued because we use Swiftly for completely different reasons
Mm-hmm.
than you guys do, but we have like a scheduling module to help with runtime adjustments, and we have some sort of like live view, a couple different live view modules that our road supervisors and customer service teams use, and that just pulls our init data directly, which I'm glad to hear nobody's going with init. I wouldn't recommend it. You didn't hear me say that. I don't even know if they even.
Do they do your GTFS?
No, that comes from. Yeah. So they're kind of Swiftly's just kind of reading the data. So it's a very. I didn't know Swiftly did so many different things at this point, but one step at a time. I think. I'd be happy to make this switch. And it's been a bear.
I think you're right about the direction that they're moving in. Like, I think they're building their own tech to like help implement that for them.
Yeah.
And what they do is they receive multiple feeds, location feeds. Like if you have your init readers and they have their readers, and they have APC units as well, and then they can sort of pull all the feeds together.
They basically knit it together.
That's right, for greater reliability. So if you hit a dead spot, right? It can fill that in.
Yeah.
All right. Any other business comments or announcements? David.
Yeah, hi everyone. Just want to let you know that we're working on a proposal to do a combined call for projects for the 2024 STIP funding cycle, and then also the $20 million in Regional Measure 3 North Bay Transit Access Improvements. We're still developing that kind of framework, but what we're looking at right now is potentially just kind of limiting it to the projects that were submitted to us for SCTA funding program previously, the unsuccessful ATP applications from the last cycle, and also depending on the outcome of our TIRSIP grant application, any of the TIRSIP projects that we submitted that aren't selected for funding by CalSTA. But we'll have more information about that at our TAC meeting this month on April 27th. And so we're encouraging everyone to attend.
Great. Great, thank you. Anything else? Look at our efficiency and timing. 11:28. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.